morning. Welcome to episode 24 of the Daily Geeky Pastimes podcast. I know I said there wasn't going to be a podcast today, but then I kind of woke up in time and had more time today than I thought I was going to. So here we are. There's quite a lot to talk about as well today. There's a lot of gaming news. I sort of woke up thinking, oh, I could probably do the podcast, but has anything really happened? Is there anything on the news? And I checked some of the kind of normal gaming news websites and there really wasn't anything. And then I looked at a couple that I don't normally look at and was like, oh, actually, quite a lot happened yesterday. So we've got a lot of gaming news today. And the main topic today is just talking about Season 3 Reloaded, which was kind of unveiled yesterday. I didn't want to do a dedicated video just about that because I don't think there's anything super interesting in it. I think a lot of it will be interesting to play. But yeah, we'll talk about it and a little bit on my thoughts about it. But good morning. Don't forget to like the stream when you come in. It does help out a bunch. And let's get started straight away. So, first news story, we've got a lot, so we're going to get it going, is that there's going to be a Diablo 4 live stream on May the 10th to detail cosmetics, the Battle Pass seasons, and more. Basically looking at post-launch content for the game. Some of you know I'm super excited about Diablo 4. It's probably my second most anticipated game of the year. I think Starfield is probably my most anticipated game. But Diablo, I think, will probably be the game I put the most time into this year. I'm really excited about it. Like, I was very hyped about it, and then when we got to play the beta, I was kind of so relieved that it was as good as I was hoping it was going to be. It was better, to be honest. I really enjoyed the gameplay. I leveled up every single class up to the maximum level. I had an awesome time sort of basically playing through all of the content in the beta over and over and over again, which is a good sign for a game like Diablo because, you know, it's hard. I'm sure there's lots of people that will play a Diablo game and just play through the story once and then put it down. But at its heart, it's kind of designed around this idea of, you know, repetition and grinding and stuff like that, but having fun while you're doing that. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what this post-launch content is and how this Battle Pass is going to work, and the idea of buying cosmetics. We've got a couple of other news stories today about, you know, cosmetics and microtransactions and stuff like that. And I think for me, everything's kind of got to a bit of a tipping point where I used to think cosmetic microtransactions were fine because it's like it's funding game development and I'm not having to pay for it because I'm not going to buy cosmetic things. I don't spend real money on stuff like that. Occasionally, you know, Call of Duty, they'll send me some COD points and I'll buy stuff using those, but I never pay for them. Just because, you know, and I don't mind other people that do pay for them. You know, it's just for me, it's not worth the money. It's not something that I'm that interested in. But it obviously does mean that they have bigger budgets to make better games that I would enjoy. But I think we're getting to a tipping point now where it's like a lot of games are seeing them as kind of the main point of those games existing. You know, there's a lot of free-to-play games where microtransactions and battle passes are like everything to them. And therefore, they want to make as much money as possible from them. And that means that they have like less good rewards for free, you know, less interesting things for free. And basically everything is something you've got to pay extra for. And that just kind of annoys me. Like, I don't really mind, you know, if I think about it in terms of, oh, I can play a game for free. And then if to get the stuff that I would normally get in a full price game, I would have to spend like 40 quid in that game, you know, in the store or whatever. That doesn't really bother me too much. Like, that's how I felt about games like Lord of the Rings Online and stuff like that, where I was like, I don't really mind having to buy a couple of mission packs because I'm playing the rest of the game for free. That's fine, you know, up to a limit of about 40 quid. But sort of moving on from the Diablo thing, and by the way, Diablo's also got a server slam, so next weekend there's going to be another open beta where they're trying to push the servers to their limit. It's completely open to everyone. You should definitely play it. I'm going to be playing it all that weekend. Even though Zelda's out that weekend, I think Zelda's going to be pushed back a few days for me so I can play the server slam thing in Diablo. But talking about the cosmetics getting a bit ridiculous, Call of Duty have just added a new bundle, which is 3,000 points, which is like 25 quid or something. And I think all you get for it is like an operator skin and a couple of guns. And it's like, it's because the operator skin has some like fancy effects on it and the guns have some fancy tracer effects. But, you know, again, just visual effects. And remember, this is a first person game, so you don't see your own skin. 3,000 points is a lot of money. Like, that's like 25 quid or something, 25, 26 pounds. And when I was saying, you know, I don't mind if I'm playing a free game. I don't mind paying some extra money. Like Marvel Snap's a good example. I've bought some of the seasons for that, which gets you a few extra cards and stuff. And I've probably spent like 20 quid on Marvel Snap, but I've played that game for a huge amount, and it's fine because it's free. Spending 20 quid on it, fine. If that game was £20, I would have bought it, so I don't mind too much. But Call of Duty, I mean, A, if you're playing multiplayer, is a 70 quid game. But if you're just playing Warzone or whatever, yeah, it's free to play. But then is one skin and, a couple of guns really worth like £25? I remember when they used to do the map packs, and I think the map packs were like £10, £15, something like that. And I always used to think they're quite expensive when you used to get, like free maps or something. You used to get like free maps on a zombies map. And I'd be like trying to convince my friends to get it so we could all play together on the new maps. And it'd be like, I don't know if this is really worth it, like 15 quid for free maps on a zombies map. And now it's like, you don't, for that amount of money, you don't even get one new skin. That just seems utterly crazy to me. And I think we've got to the point, especially in Call of Duty, where looking at things like Black Cell, looking at, and then looking at the rewards for stuff like DMZ and a lot of the free events, generally the stuff they give you as rewards for free are pretty bad, pretty boring, pretty bland. And then the stuff that they sell to you in a microtransaction store is, better, like more interesting. And that makes sense from a business point of view. But as someone that just wants to play the game and doesn't want to buy any microtransactions, it just kind of feels like you're just getting garbage. Like I always get those questions about whenever there's a new Easter egg in Call of Duty or whenever I do a guide for a mission in DMZ, I always get the sort of questions about, oh, are the rewards worth it? And it's like, no, obviously not. Like never. The rewards are never worth it. Like they're never that interesting because all of the free stuff we get is crap. Like, or 99% of it. Occasionally there's something that's kind of cool. And I think like all of that is down to that model of them trying to maximize how much money they make from microtransactions and then still be able to provide a ton of content for free. And I've said it a million times and I'm going to keep on saying it, even though I don't think it'll change anything. I think a subscription model would be better. I think like I completely understand development is expensive. It needs money to fund it. I'm not saying we should just get cool stuff for free and not have to pay anything. I'm not saying that at all. But I would much rather pay a monthly subscription to play Warzone. So the months where I want to play Warzone DMZ, I pay a monthly subscription, and included in that subscription, I get everything. Like included in that £10 a month or whatever, you get all of the new skins they make, or maybe you have to do challenges to unlock them to sort of make some of them seem a bit rarer and stuff like that. But yeah, like it just, just have like, I suppose like sort of how Fortnite does their battle pass, where you get the battle pass and you get like the challenges and stuff within that, the missions. But then you also get like extra little sort of add-ons to the battle pass that are free, but like extra little quests and things like that. I think that's kind of a better model. I know Fortnite does have a subscription as well, but I've never really understood what that's about. But yeah, I just would prefer it if like games went to a subscription model. So it's like, if we're going to have all these live service games where realistically you can't play a bunch of them at once anyway, like you couldn't be super into like World of Warcraft, Destiny, Diablo and Call of Duty at the same time. There's just not enough time. So maybe doing something like, just being like, okay, this month I'm going to really focus on playing Call of Duty and Diablo, and I'm just going to pay for the subscriptions for those. Or having, like some game studios are already doing, like having bundles. So it's like, hey, I'm going to have the Ubisoft subscription, and that means I get to play all of the Assassin's Creed games and all of the Crew games and Riders Republic and all that sort of stuff, and Rainbow Six Siege, and I get all of the stuff for those games. And then it's like, okay, but this month I'm going to play EA, or this month I'm going to play Activision. And then, it'd give those companies an incentive to release new things and to sort of make new good content and give you reasons to play, without it being like, hey, we're going to try and use like fear of missing out and stuff like that just to try and make you spend like 25 quid or whatever it is on a skin. I think it's gone too far. And like with all of this stuff, I think one of the things that I talk about quite a lot is that none of this is like black and white. None of this is like, oh, this is good and amazing and the right way to do things, and this is trash and terrible. I think microtransactions and cosmetics and stuff like that have been fine at some point. I just think for me personally, it's kind of reached a tipping point where I'm like, no, this is like sucking more fun out of the game than it's like, than the positive side of it. The negatives starting to outweigh the positives. And I'm kind of tedious. I kind of find that tedious, so that kind of sucks. Anyway, more positive news. Actually, no, this is a lot of negative stuff for a little bit. Keeping on Call of Duty, the Call of Duty World Series of Warzone qualifier rounds have been delayed. I know lots of people don't even know what World Series of Warzone is, but it's basically a big competition they hold where people can play Warzone. It's like the competitive scene for Warzone, essentially, the only official one. And they had this like open thing where you could play a playlist, and the top 50 people from that, 50 teams from that, get to compete in the qualifiers, and I think like the top 25 teams from that, or top 10 teams or something, who do well in the qualifiers, they get to play in the actual tournament and try and win prizes and stuff. And they tried holding the European qualifiers yesterday, and I don't know how many games it was, whether it was like 2 or 3, but every single one, the server just crashed. And that meant that, you know, some people had gone out early, but they were kind of saved by that. Some people were doing really well, had a great start, and then that's been erased. So it doesn't seem very fair. It kind of sucks for everybody. Well, no, it's good for some people and sucks for other people. And they've said that, like, hey, this is something that we're going to, we're just going to delay it, and then we'll start it up again. You know, we'll tell you when we're going to start it up again, when they fix the problems, I guess. There was a lot of social media weirdness about it last night that I kind of didn't argue against, but I disagree with. There's a lot of people jumping to conclusions about what it is, and again, I've talked about it before. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of people saying, well, it's obviously caused by this, and this is all they need to do to fix it, but they're not doing it, so therefore they're, you know, lazy, ignorant, whatever. And I just don't think that makes any sense. Like, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's a healthy way to look at anything like this. There are lots of people just being like, well, it's obviously just because, like, there's too many AI on the map, and it's because the servers crash when the AI spawn. Therefore, it must be the AI on the map. All they need to do is disable the AI, and then the servers would run fine. And to me, that doesn't make any sense because, like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe the AI are causing problems. Who knows? I don't work on the game. I've got literally no idea. But then neither do any of these people that are talking about it. And more importantly, if it was as simple as just turning the AI off, if they had a switch on their, you know, big dashboard thing saying like, AI, turn off, you know, strongholds, black sites, turn off, then they would do it. Like, they've shown lots and lots of times that when something is breaking the game, whether it's a gameplay thing or whether it's a bug or whatever, they just turn it off. And, you know, they've taken playlists away before, they've taken vehicles away before, they've taken, like, gadgets away before, perks away before. They've taken things away because they've broken the game. So why would they not be doing this? I know some people are like, oh, well, it's because they, you know, really want to push, like, the idea of DMZ in Battle Royale, and it's like they really care about it. All that Infinity Ward cares about is AI, so they don't want to take it away because then we'll find out the game's secretly better without it. It's like, that's just nonsense. They just want the game to be as good as it can be. And, like, servers crashing for, like, weeks at this point isn't that. Like, it isn't the game being as good as it could be. If it was the AI causing it, I am 100% convinced they would have disabled the AI by now. Or or maybe there just isn't a way to disable the AI easily. Maybe, you know, it's like something that they, for whatever reason, didn't develop in there. But yeah, I just don't think it's an easy fix. I think if it was an easy fix, they would have done it. And like, that's kind of all of the logic you need to be like, okay, is it an easy thing to fix? If so, they would have done it. Have they done it? No, it's not an easy thing to fix. Like, they obviously don't want the game crashing. They don't want World Series of Warzone having to be postponed or anything like that. I definitely don't think it's just like a matter of, hey, there's a playlist update and now everything's fixed. There must be something more complicated going on, which makes sense that there's something that we wouldn't understand because we didn't make the game. We don't know how the game runs. And as much as content creators and, you know, social media channels can speculate with absolutely no consequences, you know, it doesn't matter. If someone puts out a tweet saying, this is what the problem is and this is how they should fix it, no one will ever hold them to account. No one will ever be like, hey, like, you were wrong about that. Like, that isn't what the problem was. No one's ever going to be like, blah, blah, blah. Like, so it's a completely risk-free thing to say. So you can sound as confident as you want. I could go in there and be like, oh, well, it's buggies. Like, the buggies, the ATV buggies, like, they're crashing everything. Like, they're causing all of the problems. They should just remove them. If they remove them, everything will be fixed. And it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what I say because, like, no one's ever going to hold me to account for that. Whereas the developers, they actually have to do something. They, like, actually need to be trying to fix this, so they can't just, like, make up stuff. And, it, you know, it annoys me no end. We've had this with Call of Duty repeatedly in social media, where people just become, like, armchair experts in game programming. As if, like, I mean, I would imagine there's people probably working on other AAA games that have no idea what could be going wrong in Call of Duty because they haven't worked on Call of Duty. Like, you know, it's its own thing. It's been working on this engine for, like, God knows how long now. You know, different versions of it. If you haven't worked at that studio on this version of the game, on Warzone 2, you don't know what's going on. And to assume that you do know what's going on just seems like kind of arrogant, and I really don't like it when people are going around just saying, what is this, or saying like lots of people say it's this, as if that's kind of, because that's a sneaky way of doing it, isn't it? That's like when newspapers do it, where they're like, lots of people are saying this, lots of experts are saying this, and it's like, name them, like say who they are, because then you can judge whether they're reliable or not. You know, if someone says lots of people are saying that AI is crashing servers in Warzone, if that lots of people is like Charlie Intel, Modern Warzone, like I don't know, like Syndicate, Noah J, Tim the Tatman. If it's like them, then I'm like, well, they don't know. They're just playing the game. They've got no idea. If it's like Ted Timmons, then I'm like, oh yeah, well they probably do know because like they work on the game. You know, it's like that sort of weird thing. So yeah, like I mean, maybe it's AI, maybe it's not. My point is not pretending that I know what it is. I'm more saying it is kind of weird to presume that you do know what it is and to talk so confidently and people just to blindly believe that. And if it was an easy fix, they would have done it already. Like 100% they would have done it. Okay, just reading a little bit in chat because I think there's some sort of conversation going on here. There's some sort of discourse. Daniel Acklam said, monthly subscription for loot? You're kidding, right? Just give us dedicated servers so we can create our own servers like we had until World at War. Those weren't dedicated servers. We have dedicated servers now, Daniel Acklam. That you're talking about peer-to-peer hosting, isn't it? When like, I mean, but being able to make your own servers, I think is what you mean. Private servers is what you mean. But monthly subscription for loot? No, I mean monthly subscription for the game. The game has to be paid for. The game has to be paid for. I would think to me, the best way of paying for a game like Warzone would be a monthly subscription. That's what I mean. Why So Salty said, servers have been bad for a week. Had rubber banding issues loads recently and booted out games. Yeah, I've played a little bit of Battle Royale, and I've had the same thing. On Al Mazrah, we played, like, the other night, we played 5 games, and I think 3 of those games crashed. We only actually finished 2 of them, which kind of sucks. Afa says, gotta love people who aren't programmers or server engineers weighing on these problems. I would go further than that. I would say people who aren't even programmers or server engineers who work on Call of Duty. I think, like, I see a lot of time where people are like, I'm in software development, so it must be this. Like, I'm in software development, so it must be this. It's like different studios work in completely different ways. Different, like, engines work in very different ways. Different server architectures work in very different ways. Like, no one else is doing what Call of Duty is doing. Like, even, you know, people always make the comparison of like, well, Fortnite aren't having these problems. Apex isn't having these problems. And it's like, yeah, but they're also running on very different engines with a very different server setup, a very different set of players, very different demands within the game. Like, I'm not sure how relevant they are. Like, you know, maybe you could have a bit of a better insight. I would say generally when I've seen people who know a lot about programming and stuff like that, more than them being able to then say what the problem is, it's more likely that then they are in a position to be like, oh yeah, we don't know what the problem is. Like, we can't know what the problem is. They're like, the more experience you have in a field, the better you are at realizing your limits. So the better you are at realizing what you don't know. It's like, you know, sort of like, to give an example of what, like my kind of, like something that I know more about is like playing musical instruments. Like, you know, when I was a kid, I used to play guitar quite a lot. And like, when I didn't play guitar, when I didn't play any musical instruments, you could watch someone doing, like, you know, you could watch someone like Metallica or Van Halen or something like that and be like, oh, it's just showing off. Like, you know, it's not very musical. It's not very, like, I'm sure anyone could do that if they just practiced a bit. And then, you know, you play guitar for a few years and you're like, oh no, that's incredible talent. Like, they're doing something that I just couldn't do. Like, especially playing like that while, you know, performing and stuff like that. You sort of, like, the more experience you get in doing it, the more you realize, hey, that's super impressive what they're doing. Same with like streaming. It's very easy to sit back and look at someone like Dr. Disrespect and be like, oh, it'd be easy to do what he's doing. He's just messing around, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, now I've been streaming for a few years. It's like, I can look at Dr. Disrespect, and even though I don't like his content very much, I can still look at it and be like, whoa, that's super impressive. You know, him staying in character for as long, him having the production stuff that he's doing on the stream. It's very impressive, like what he's managing to do to put out those kind of shows. The more experience you have in something, I think, yeah, just like lets you know your limits and let you realize how complicated it is. Generally, the people who are like, oh, I know everything, I know better than the experts in this, are the people who know nothing. You know, it's like that's, I think, more often than not how that works. Affa said, I don't think I ever remember a COD that had great servers. For whatever reason, it's always felt like Activision cheap out on servers. This is not a developer choice. I still disagree. I don't think there's ever been like any games that have great servers. Like you look at some of like the most successful games, the biggest games, like GTA Online, World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, Battlefield. All of them have had major server problems on and off, like over time. And it's like, I just think the problem is incredibly hard. Like, I just think it's one of those things where it is an incredibly difficult problem, and the people who are at the forefront of doing it are struggling immensely. Therefore, it's probably something that's very, very hard to do because no one's really getting it right at that kind of scale. You know, and you can look at other games like Counter-Strike or something and be like, well, they're getting it right. But it's like they've got like, what, 12 players, 10 players in a match. Like, it's probably less of an issue. I think it's probably just a very hard thing. I think there's definitely a case for like, maybe people are being too ambitious. Like, you know, maybe I've always thought this with like Warzone, that maybe like, do we need 150 players? Like, is that important that we have that many people in the game? Wouldn't, like, I would personally prefer it if everything was like more stable and maybe a bit more polished and there was less people playing it. Like, you know, I always thought when we had battle royales and stuff and there were like 60 players, that was quite a good number. But for some reason, we've like more than doubled that. And I don't know if that's ever made a game better, but I don't know. Again, I don't know. It doesn't matter people who are complaining are not programmers. The game developers are and have years of MF experience of making the same damn game, and they're a AAA studio. They haven't had years of experience of making the same damn game. Warzone 2 isn't the same as Warzone 1 was. Warzone isn't the same as Call of Duty was. DMZ isn't the same as Warzone was. They're constantly pushing the boundary and doing new things. Like, all of the time they've been doing new things. That's just not true. Affa said, you can ask them to fix it, but definitively stating what the problem is would require you to be a professional in the field. Yep, and the whole thing of like asking them to fix it, I just find it insane that people are like saying to like Activision, like, you fix your servers. And it's like, as if they don't know, like as if they want the servers to be broken. Like, that's such a weird thing. It's like, you know, do you like go up to people who are like broken down the side of the road and be like, fix your car? It's like, yeah, they're probably working on that, but it's, you know, not super easy. I do actually have a good news story related to this. I just want to go through the news before I want to go through the comments before we move on. Sam S continued, making billions every year. They have to be on point of everything and be on top. Do they? Because they're making billions every year and they're not on point of everything and they're like not always perfect. So I think they're already doing it right. Probably, like they probably know what they're doing because, you know, they keep making the most successful game every year. They're not a little indie studio with no money or capabilities. They have to be on top. They are on top. Best-selling game every year. They're doing very well for themselves. Loxy said, stop playing a couple of weeks ago. AAA devs are full cringe now. Just support indie studios. I mean, if you want, like, that's perfectly valid. If you don't like AAA games, go support the indie studios. I like AAA games. I like supporting those studios too, and I like indie games. Again, I don't think it's like black and white. Good morning, bods. Yes, they were. I rented servers from Gaming Deluxe, and at one point I ran 30 servers from your own dedicated server. Yeah, no, I meant like Daniel Ackham. I meant like what you were saying. Like back in the days of Call of Duty World at War and stuff like that, we had peer-to-peer servers. Like I know we had peer-to-peer servers. Like that was a thing for quite a long while in Call of Duty because you'd have host advantage and stuff like that. But like, I get that dedicated servers could be a thing, but I thought what you were talking about was having private servers. Because right now, Call of Duty has dedicated servers. Like, it has dedicated servers just the same as it ever has done since it's had dedicated servers. When you, like, load into a game of Call of Duty, that's not running off someone else's PC who's playing the game. That's a dedicated server that is just a server. That's what that means, dedicated server. Well, as opposed to what Call of Duty used to be like, which was peer-to-peer, where one person's game console would actually be running the server, and everyone else would connect to them, and then they had host advantage, which used to be kind of the normal way of doing things on console, but it did give one person basically like literally zero ping, which gave them quite a big advantage. It was rubbish. And if they left the game, it would be like migrating host, and then a lot of the time that would just crash and that just wouldn't work, which kind of sucked. The game should not be a monthly sub. They're already making tons of money. They don't need more money. They need to understand what they have to raise the bar on a game. I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying, Sam. I'm saying not more money. I'm saying they should I think a subscription model would be better than the microtransaction model to replace it. It's a different way of them getting money, not more money. But anyway, I don't think it's worth carrying on with Sam. I don't think he's listening. You're not buying anything other than the Battle Pass. Not going to throw your money on this. I mean, if you feel so strongly, I wouldn't buy the Battle Pass either. I'd just stop playing. That's probably the best way you can do it. Also, you think the COD servers are bad, try playing Destiny. Yeah, we've got some news about Destiny as well. We'll talk about that a little bit. It's already a monthly sub if you think about it. Yeah, kind of. Something like that. Dane Ackham says, that's a shame Destiny servers aren't great. Yeah, the Destiny thing is kind of struggling a little bit. Anyway, let's go back to news because we've got a lot more things. So just talking about bugs, there's a really good article, and I'll find it actually and put it on in chat so people can read it themselves. But there's a really cool article on PC Gamer that I just came across this morning, like I said, when I was looking for news, that I thought this was super interesting. I did tweet this out as well. That just does a really good job of explaining how there's a problem. You know, people always do this whole thing of like, whatever game that they're super invested in, they think that game has all of these problems and the developers are terrible. And they're like, why doesn't it work like every other game where their developers fix bugs and their developers blah, blah, blah. And anyway, the problem is that obviously because we don't know anything, because we're not working on the game and like, that's what it is. Like, you can't really help that very much. There's no real way to solve that. And the developers can't often talk about things because, you know, there's various reasons why companies wouldn't want their developers to talk about how they fix bugs and stuff like that. You know, part of it is just not wanting to seem like their game has lots of problems. And part of it is because they don't want to give help to their competitors. You know, so some of the stuff, they're paying people to solve problems for them. They don't want to then solve the problems for all of their competitors. Like, there's lots of industry protected secrets and stuff like that going on. But anyway, super interesting article. And just before I get onto that, Preza said, subscription services work on PC. Because on PC, you don't pay to play online. On console, we pay to play online. Not on Warzone, you don't. You don't have to have PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live Gold to pay Warzone. You definitely don't have to have PlayStation Plus. I'm pretty sure you don't have to have Xbox Gold either for the free-to-play games. And you want us to pay monthly to play COD? I mean, like, it's not really up to me. It's not my decision. I'm just saying I would prefer that model. How long till other devs catch on? What do you mean? How long till other developers listen to me saying how I think it would be better for games to make money? I mean, it would be nice if I had that kind of influence in the industry, but I don't think I do. But yeah. I mean, the whole thing of, like, you paying for to play online in consoles, it does seem strange. I mean, I pay that because I play on consoles. But yeah, as far as I know, on the consoles, if you're playing free-to-play games, you don't need to pay that monthly fee. But I pay for Game Pass anyway. Yeah, I mean, like, that is a weird thing if you're paying one subscription just to be able to play online, and then you have to pay a subscription for the game. But bear in mind, that money that you're paying to play online doesn't go towards the game you want to play necessarily, unless, you know, you're playing Halo, I guess. But that's free to play, so I don't think you need Xbox Live Gold for it. Like, I just think, like, there's an essential kind of truth that game development needs to be paid for, and AAA game development's getting more and more expensive. And I think most people, at least sensible people, want game developers to have a decent standard of living, like a decent quality of life. They don't want them to be rushed, so that means they need to be more developers. You know, there needs to be big teams work on stuff. I want high quality games to be made. I want the people who make them to be compensated fairly. So I want them to make a lot of money, and I want the game publishers to be able to take risks. Like, I always, you know, you hear that nonsense about, oh, well, you know, this company's making £1 billion on this, so, like, they should be able to do everything right. And it's like, but having that, you know, when you think of a game can easily now cost hundreds of millions of pounds, you kind of want them to be able to take risks, because otherwise all that you would ever get is like mindless sequels. All you'd ever get is like FIFA 23, 24, 25, or EA Sports or whatever. I don't know what, the EA Football or whatever. You'd never get them taking risks ever. But because they make a lot of money with one game, that means that then they can kind of take risks and try other things. You know, and some companies are really good for that. I know Activision don't really do that so much. They don't make so many other games. But someone like, you know, Ubisoft are really good at that, where, you know, they'll make a ton of money off something like Far Cry and Assassin's Creed, and then they'll make something like Riders Republic or For Honor or Roller Champions. And like, they'll do something where it's like, hey, we might lose a bunch of money on this, but we can afford to because we just made $1 billion on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. You know, and I think like that's the way that kind of industry works. And it's the way Hollywood works. It's the way TV works. You know, you have some things that make a guaranteed huge income, and then you can spend that money on all of the other things. And obviously there's always problems with like executives getting too much of the money and like the money not getting proportioned out fairly and all of that sort of stuff. Again, it's not all black and white. There's lots of shades of gray. But the concept of like where you get gamers being like, I want to be able to play this for free, and I want to get all of the good things for free, and I want you to update it every week, and I want you to fix all of the bugs all of the time forever. It just, that's not the real world. It's not worth engaging with that kind of thing. It's just nonsense. I'm a secret Activision board member. I'd love that. If you do it right, Game Pass can be free if you go through Microsoft Rewards. Very strange. Anyway, sorry, going back to this article I was talking about. This really cool article. So I think I put the link in chat, didn't I? I think so. Yeah, I put the link in chat. So this is from PC Gamer, and they've got an article on a bug in Overwatch 2. So this is, Blizzard now, so still kind of Activision Blizzard, still within the same company. But this is Blizzard, and they were saying that there was a problem in Overwatch 2 where some players were reporting, after the Season 16 update, they were reporting that the audio for guns and grenades would just cut out. It would just stop. And so they'd be playing with no gun audio or grenade audio, which is quite a big deal, in a first-person shooter game. You don't want to not have any audio. And this persisted for months, and they had the problem that they, in their testing for Season 16, they didn't pick up on it at all. It didn't happen. When they first got the reports of it, because some people were basically immediately reporting this was happening in Season 16, they were like, oh, we can't replicate it. Like, we can do the things that people are saying, but we can't replicate it. And then people would submit like their VODs, people would submit videos saying like, hey, this is where it happened, look at what happened. And they still couldn't work out what was happening because the VODs weren't really showing what it was. And it literally took them months to work out what was happening. And like, they actually like been quite transparent. In this article on PC Gamer, they talk about exactly what happened. And it turned out that like they managed to narrow it down to, they realized that it was only really happening in high level play. So like it was happening in, high rank matches. It was happening with players who were like super good playing against each other. And they were like, that's kind of interesting. Like, why is it happening in those matches more than it's happening at the lower end? And yeah, they realized it was something to do with there's a function on the server that sends a command to the game to start and stop sounds. So, someone is firing a gun near you, the server tells your game, hey, play this audio file at this volume and, in this direction and stuff like that, and then tells you when to stop it when they stop firing and stuff like that. That's a system that exists, and I imagine there's probably systems like that in most games. So they realized it was something to do with that, and they realized what was happening was that system was getting overwhelmed and therefore wasn't like adding new sounds to it because it would just had too many things to deal with. Because any system in a computer game, any system in a program has a limit, a point where it will run out of whatever it is, like bandwidth, or whether it's running out of memory, or whether it's running out of processor cycles. There's some sort of like physical limit to what can be done. And this was happening, like this was getting overwhelmed. So the sounds won't get started. And they realized it was because of a new weapon they added with Season 16, has an effect where you can, when you deal damage, it charges up. And when it charges up, there's like some electricity arcing and there's some sound effects associated with that and some visuals associated with that. So that was happening every time someone was shooting with that gun. And then they realized that there was one line of code that was wrong, where the signal to try and stop that sound when it stopped charging, was accidentally being applied to every player that had that gun. So every player that had that weapon equipped was getting that sort of, was getting that thing happening to them. Oh, sorry, not Overwatch. I'm saying Overwatch. It's Apex Legends. So I apologize. I'm talking about the wrong game. I was about to say that doesn't make sense with weapons. It wasn't Overwatch at all. That's my bad. Apex Legends. Don't know where I got Overwatch from. I think I wrote Overwatch on my notes. That was a mistake. There we go. Apex. So yeah, so it was something that happened with Apex Legends, and it was this new gun, and I thought that was really interesting. And yeah, it was being applied to everybody that had this gun equipped. And that by itself, they were still like, but why would that crash the servers? Like, it's only like probably within earshot of someone, that's like 14 people. That's not that much of a problem. Like, that's not that much of an issue. So they were like, okay, so what's going on here? Why is it sometimes causing so much trouble that it's actually like cutting out the audio entirely? And they realized that it was sending the signal out to stop it it does it on the frame that it happens. Like on the frame that it stops charging, that's when it's meant to send a signal. And because it was sending it out constantly to everyone that had the gun, it was actually doing it for every frame. And that meant people who were playing with high frame rates, so people who were playing with like over 180 frames per second, were getting this 180 times a second. So now you've got 14 players getting this same message, the same like command 180 times a second. That's enough to overflow it. So that's why it was only affecting the high level play, because those are the people that are running at super high frame rates. Those are the people that have machines that are capable of that kind of thing. So they're, or at least, you know, they're more likely to be, because they're people that take the game more seriously and stuff like that, and are maybe turning down some of the visual quality and stuff to run it at a high frame rate. That's what was causing the problem. And I thought that was so interesting. That was such an interesting insight that, like, if you told people, oh, hey, there's this bug in Apex Legends and it's causing the audio to cut out, what do you think's causing it? You could get, like, I bet you'd get a load of people being like, you know, coming up with ideas about exactly what it was. And I mean, I'm not in the Apex Legends community, but I'm sure there was a bunch of people saying what they thought it was, or authoritatively saying it must be this is what's doing it. You know, this is what's making grenades not make a noise in Apex. And then it turns out that it's like people having an incredibly high frame rate and using a particular gun, like, or having a gun in their inventory. Like, that was the thing that was causing it. That was the thing that was cutting it out for everyone. And yeah, and it was all because of one line of code and, you know, people running incredibly high frame rates. So it's interesting. And they were saying that, like, the reason they didn't pick it up in their testing is maybe because people in their testing environments, not everyone picked up the gun at the same time. Maybe when they were doing their testing environments, the machines they were testing on weren't running, like, they didn't have enough people running at those high frame rates. They might have been like, okay, we'll have 5 PCs running at high frame rates, and then we'll have 5 PCs running at low frame rates and 5 medium, which sounds reasonable. Turns out in one game, you need 14 people running incredibly high frame rates for this bug to occur. It's just super interesting. I thought it's like such a complicated, kind of unexpected thing. And now, you know, they fixed it and they've said that, okay, so now they know in future they need to test things where everyone in the game has a high frame rate and stuff like that. That was cool. Anyway. Oh yeah, like, and then talking about other games, just while we're moving on, because I'm conscious of the time. The Destiny, I mentioned that Destiny, there's something's going on with Destiny. There's a kind of an interesting news story that Destiny's developer, Bungie, have successfully sued a cheat maker, and they sued them for $12 million, or pounds, was it? Is it pounds or dollars? No, dollars. Yeah, dollars. $12 million. And there's a couple of things that are interesting about this. I mean, like, Bungie have been successful a couple of times now in prosecuting these cheat sellers. The first one, that I thought it was going to be some big company, you know, some big cheat selling company or something like that. But it wasn't. It was one guy. It was a Romanian guy. And that's kind of interesting that Bungie were able to successfully sue a Romanian national, like someone in a different country. I'm not entirely sure how the legal stuff for that works, but I thought that was kind of interesting, because I've always thought that was a big problem, that they couldn't go after cheat sellers in other countries. Maybe it's just certain countries, I don't know. But anyway, the reason the cost was so high is that apparently they charged him, they wanted compensation for $2,000, which was apparently how much he sold the cheats for the like 6,000 or so people that he sold cheats to. He sold like 6,000 copies of this cheat. Does that mean people are paying $2,000 to cheat at Destiny? Like, that's absolutely insane. Like, that just absolutely blows my mind that people are spending $2,000 to cheat at a game, especially to cheat at Destiny, where the PvP isn't even like the main part of it. Not many people take the PvP part of that seriously. Like, that just absolutely blew my mind. $2,000, and like, they had nearly 6,000 people buy it. I struggle to get like 100 people to pay $1.99 a month. You can sign up for that as my membership thing on YouTube, or you can, you know, become a subscriber on Twitch. Either of those is a really nice way to support me. But anyway, $2,000 just seemed insane to me. That really surprised. That was the bit of that news story that was the most shocking to me, is that someone was making that kind of money. And when you think someone's making that kind of money, you can see why, like, making cheats for games is something that probably attracts some very good programmers, some very good developers, because it's like, that's an insane amount of money to get. And hopefully these court cases continue and more people get caught, and then, you know, people get fined and it becomes too risky for people to get involved in. Like, I hope that does happen. But yeah, $2,000 just blew my mind. I thought that was really interesting. I've got no idea if it was in an EU court. The fact that everything was in dollars made me think that it was somehow somehow like American thing. Yeah, it says it was American courts because they used violations of the DMCA Copyright Act, which is an American thing, and violations of the Washington's Consumer Protection Act, which is an American thing. So they were using American courts to do it by the looks of it. But I thought that was really interesting. Anyway, and then other news stories. I've done these completely out of order now. Oh, the last one I want to talk about was just that Microsoft have announced their big summer showcase. It's going to be June the 11th, so kind of when E3 would normally be. So we've got about a month until then, a month and a week. I'm quite excited about it. I know lots of people have been like, oh, well, Redfall is suffering, so, Microsoft should be worried about what the state of their games are. I mean, I don't know. Like, I get it that, like, Microsoft doesn't have lots of good first-party exclusives. Like, I would say that stuff like Sea of Thieves is incredibly good, but obviously that's quite old now. Forza Horizon 5 is incredibly good. I'm sure the new Forza Motorsport will be good. I've got lots of faith in that. But yeah, they haven't had, like, a big hit for, like, a single-player game or a, like, when you look at Sony's, like, action-adventure games like Last of Us and Uncharted and Spider-Man and stuff like that, Horizon, Microsoft just doesn't have something like that. So it'll be interesting to see what they're doing. It'll be interesting to see what they're showing off. It'll be interesting to see whether we get to see any more of like Fable or Avowed or Perfect Dark, like some of those games that were announced quite a long time ago that we haven't really seen anything from them. It'll be interesting to see where to go. And then straight after that show, there's going to be the Starfield deep dive, where they're going to show off a lot more of that game. Again, that'll be really interesting. I think lots of people are paying attention to that, being like, surely they have to get this right. Surely it has to. I mean, I don't agree with the whole like drama thing where people are like, should they have to, or it's the end of Xbox. Like, it's not. Like, I'm sure Xbox is doing very well. I know like PlayStation in terms of games and sales and stuff is definitely doing much better at the moment. I'm not sure how much the whole console war thing really matters to Microsoft, like, or Sony for that matter. I'm not sure how much it keeps them up at night thinking like, oh, like Sony's selling this many PlayStations and we're selling this many Xbox and Nintendo's selling this many Switches. I think it's much more, are we getting a decent investment back on what we're spending? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know whether they're making enough money from Game Pass and whether they're making enough money from Xbox and that sort of thing. But I don't think it's so much about the comparison to what other companies are doing. I think it's much more, hey, we're putting this much money into Xbox. How much money are we getting back out? And, is there growth there or is it dropping off or whatever's happening? I still really like my Xbox. I actually bought another Xbox controller because I was fed up with my various other controllers not working. But and I just figured I'll just keep buying the cheaper Xbox controllers, and then when they break, I'll buy a new one because I don't know what else to do at this point. The controllers, I'm just having a nightmare of controllers lately. But I still like the Xbox controller. I like the Xbox Game Pass. I really liked it. Last night I had a problem with my Bethesda account and I had to reset something on it. And they asked me, the customer support was like, oh, to like recover this part of the account, can you tell us how many atoms you have in Fallout 76, which is like the currency you use in Fallout 76? And I was like thinking like, God, I've got no idea. And I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to like download the game. It's gonna take like a night. Like, I've got a rubbish internet speed, so it's gonna take me hours to download the game just to load it up to check how many atoms I've got in a store, so then I can reply to this email. And then I went on to Fallout 76 on my Xbox and was like, oh, I can just play the cloud version. Just press the cloud version. The game started up instantly. Didn't have to download anything. Didn't have to update anything. Just literally started up straight away. And I was immediately in my account with my save and everything. Could see everything. And to be honest, the visual quality was really good. I know that game's ugly anyway, but like the visual quality is really good. It's like, I don't even use this feature very much, the whole cloud gaming thing. But that was super impressive. And then I managed to get all the account stuff sorted straight away. And I was like, there's so many times I have an urge to play something and then I leave it to download like overnight. And then the next day I don't want to play it anymore and I just delete it again, which is really stupid. I do this so many times. And it's like, why don't I just play the cloud versions of these games when I have the urge to play it? Like, I should really do that a bit more. But yeah, I just forgot it was an option. So, especially when you're on the console. I know you can do it on your phone, on your PC, but I'd forgotten that it was so easy to do it on the console. But yeah, anyway, big Xbox Showcase, June 11th. I'm excited about it. I'll be watching it for sure. I cannot wait. So, I'll just very quickly catch up on chat before we move on to the last part where we're talking about Call of Duty. Michael Valario said, I understand everyone's getting hyped up for Reloaded, but back in the day, this focus on content and DLCs was more on what they're bringing to Reloaded, or they slow flowing the content so we don't get bored of the content. I don't understand what you're saying, Michael. I'm sorry. I don't understand it. Alpha said, oh yeah, talking about those bugs, how complicated getting audio to sync properly and stuff must be a nightmare. Yep. Is that the same as the Starfield Direct, or is there an additional Microsoft Showcase event? So, Mark, they're doing the Microsoft Showcase event, the Xbox Showcase event first on June the 11th, and then when it ends, then the Starfield event starts. So they're two separate events, but like one after the other. So it's like Starfield won't be at the Microsoft show, but then it has its own thing afterwards, which makes sense, I think. So, PlayStation certainly seems to care about how they're competing. I think a lot of that's just like marketing things. Like they talk about it. I don't know how much they really care. I don't know how much like it keeps them up at night being like, oh, like we're selling this many PlayStations, but is it more than we're selling Xboxes in this territory? Is it more than like how's their Game Pass subscriptions doing? I just don't know. I don't think whenever I've spoken to anyone who works at Microsoft, I've never got that sense at all. I've never spoken to anyone really that works at Sony very much other than asking for game codes. But I've never really had that sense at all that it's something that permeates very much. It's like a part of their kind of the way they engage with the online community. Because you always have to remember, and I'm sure we talk about this loads, the gaming community in terms of people who play games is like 5% of them are people who are online and talking about it on Twitter and sharing memes and on Reddit and on YouTube and stuff like that, talking about games. And the other 95% of people just aren't aware of any of that. And it's like, I think that's super easy to forget that like that's the market that matters, is the big audience that don't follow gaming news. They're not going to watch this showcase on June 11th. They don't they don't know what's coming out until it's already out or it's on the side of a bus or something. They don't care about like console wars and stuff like that. I think like that's a much, much, much bigger audience and a much more important audience. But obviously the gaming companies feel like a need to engage with the sort of super hardcore gaming community to probably spend a lot of money individually on games and stuff like that. They do feel a need to engage with them, and a part of that is the whole stupid console wars and stuff like that, and I think that's like their way of doing it. But I think it's always a bit tongue-in-cheek. It's always a bit like, all right, kids, like, oh, who's going to win, Xbox or PlayStation? But I don't think like the adult side of the company cares about it very much. It's a very sort of childish thing. Anyway, let's talk about Call of Duty Season 3 Reloaded. We're not going to need very long to talk about this because there's not a huge amount in it, to be honest. I'm going to put it up on the screen. This is Season 3 Reloaded. They did the blog post yesterday. Like I said, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh god, I need to do a video. There's Warzone Ranked and DMZ stuff coming out and a new raid. But then when I read through it, I was like, I don't think there's anything surprising in this, really. Well, there's one thing that's surprising, but there's not much. So first of all, it talks about the stuff that's coming to Modern Warfare 2, so the paid version of the game. We're getting the new raid. I was a bit disappointed with this because it says they push deeper into the Soviet base. It's like, oh good, we're still in Atomgrad. Like, probably my biggest issue with the raid so far in Modern Warfare 2 is that they've all been in the same location. We've had two of them that are just still in the same place. It's this dreary old silo. It doesn't look very interesting. It doesn't look impressive. The most of the gunfights are essentially there's a corridor and there's some enemies at the end of it, and you're pushing up through the corridor, killing the enemies as you go. And that's like most of the gunfights in it. There's just not a lot of variety, which seems like a shame when you think of like the Call of Duty campaigns. You have like lots of different things, big open sniper battles, vehicle sections, stealthy bits, some bits where you're like fighting room to room, some bits where you're going building to building, some bits where you're going like street to street. Sometimes you're going across open fields and farmlands or forests or mountains or stuff like that. There's a lot of variety, and that's kind of always been a lot of the fun of Call of Duty. And the raid is just like, like the raid really, we had the first one was, oh, you're going around in knee-high water, and sometimes you're going underwater. And then the second one was like, you're jumping across some weird vents for some reason. And now this one, it's like, it looks like it's going to be something about, like water with electricity in it, and it's like, oh, what, we're going to be flicking switches to turn off the electricity in water. Never seen that in a video game before. I think the raids really suffer from like a lack of like creativity and like just interest, really. They're just not that interesting to do. I like both times we've done them. I've kind of enjoyed going through them once, and I haven't felt the need to go back through them again. And they do, like, you know, they have rewards. So if you go through them like 7 times, you get a different reward every time. And it's like, I don't really feel the need to. I haven't even done the second one on Veteran yet. I haven't tried it. I just wasn't that into it, to be honest. I didn't think it was great. You remember when the first raid used to take 2 hours because it was actually challenging? Really? That first raid, the first time we did it, I think took us about 2 hours, but after that, it only took us about 40 minutes. The first raid wasn't that hard. Like, we did the first raid, like, took us about 2 hours. Then we did it on Veteran. I think that took us about 50 minutes. Like, the first time we did it on Veteran took us about 50 minutes. I don't think it took us that long the second time round. And then, like, when we went back to, like, look for intel and stuff like that, we could fly through it pretty quickly after that. I don't know. I didn't think it was that interesting, really. And, you know, you compare it to, like, the raids in Destiny or World of Warcraft or The Division even, and it's like all of those work on the basis of, like, spectacle and really interesting mechanics in fights. And I think, like, Call of Duty just they don't have the tools available to do that. They haven't done stuff that, like, works in that way yet, I don't think. And I don't think they will. I never hear anyone talking about the raids. I never see much content about the raids. I don't think we'll ever see the raids again. I think these raids have already been made. That's my assumption, is that all of these raids are already done. And after they finish, we'll never see them again. Just, I don't think people care. You need to have a half decent time. You don't have any mates who play. Yeah, there are people about who are always up for doing the raids. I always see people asking. It's like, it's a big problem, you know, that Call of Duty doesn't really have a good looking for group thing. Like, their Discord is a mess. And there's not many services do it. I'm surprised Discord hasn't done, like, the Discord as a whole haven't done that. Oh, there's a Discord news story as well. Apparently they're going to ask us to change our usernames. And it's like, when they ask you, it's like first come, first taken. So I feel sorry for people like Tim the Tatman and stuff, because people will 100% try to take those names. But anyway, it's weird. George says DMZ's boring now. I don't know. I think I've just burnt out on DMZ. I've just played it too much. Anyway, so we've got the raid, and, you know, look, it's just dark, and it's a tunnel again. It's like, fine. And if you complete it, you get Alex as an operator. Like, woohoo. Okay, I don't care. Sorry, I know I don't like being so negative about it, but I just think the raids have been a bit disappointing. There's a new Spec Ops mission. It's just another Defender one on Hafid Port this time. They're fun. Like, I quite like the Mount Zaya Defender mission. It's all right, but nothing, like, shockingly exciting. We're getting a new multiplayer map, Alberon Hatchery. I don't know if I've played... I don't think I've played the other 2 multiplayer maps yet. That Lighthouse one, and there was another one, wasn't there? There was 2 with this season. I haven't played either of those 2 yet. So, yeah, I'm not too excited about it doing a new map. Giant Infection could be kind of fun. That's like, Giant Infection is like Ground War, but with Infection. So I'm kind of interested to do that. Stuff like that used to be fun. I used to play that a little bit in Modern Warfare 2019 and had a good time with it. What is that skin with the long hair? I haven't seen that before. Is that a new one? And then FaceOff is just 3v3 gunfight, but I think it has like respawn mode, so it's like team deathmatch stuff, so you keep coming back. FaceOff was kind of fun in Modern Warfare 2019. Like, or was it Modern Warfare 3? I thought that was in Modern Warfare 2019. Anyway, yeah, FaceOff is kind of fun, but again, not something I'll spend loads of time on. Gunfight, I think if they added like either a ranked mode or a tournament style mode to it, I would play that a lot more. As it is, like, I've enjoyed what I've played of Gunfight, but, you know, the maps seem good. But it's just not something that I keep coming back to, really. So anyway, moving away from Modern Warfare 2. So there's basically the only thing that I'm really interested in Modern Warfare 2 is, like, I'll do the raid. I'll play through the raid once, I imagine, if I can convince Scotto and Flynn to do it. And then I will probably play Giant Infection a couple of times. But that's about it. But Warzone 2, so we've got some new features. We've got perk packages, so now you'll be able to get perk packages and supply boxes and buy stations. It looks like they don't stack with the perks that you get, so that's kind of interesting. But it does mean that people will have perks earlier on. I'm not a big fan of this. I don't really like perks. It's a part of my whole thing of I don't like loadouts in Warzone. I'm not a big fan of perks, especially because you can't tell what the enemy has. Like, you've got no way of knowing if an enemy has high alert or if an enemy has tracker or something like that. And I don't think that's great. I don't like it when there is no way to outplay it. There's no way to sort of like compensate for it. I think that kind of sucks. But you know, they're there. I don't mind it so much like in Blackout when they had perks, but they all had like noise effects and stuff with them. I think that's a nice way of doing it, and there weren't that many of them. But and they were all like timed. You know, you had to use them, and you only had like 30 seconds or so to use them. I thought that was a little bit better. But yeah, the idea of just like everyone having perks at the beginning, it's just, you know, an extension of everyone having loadouts at the beginning. I think it's kind of tedious. Deployable buy station, that's a good thing. Like being able to carry a deployable buy station around, then set it up and resupply. That's going to be like the way to solve the problem. I know lots of people have been complaining that you can't buy people back in final circles and stuff like that. Now you'll have a deployable buy station, so you'll be able to do that. So that seems good. Also available in DMZ. This is kind of interesting because like buy stations in DMZ are super useful. Like, you know, you can sell stuff there. You can buy an exfil from there now. You can buy vehicles from there. There's so much stuff that you use it for in DMZ. You can like use it to make stuff. So that's really interesting that you'll be able to use it in DMZ. That's a cool addition. I think that's a good thing. Having more buy stations is a good thing. And a Gulag entry kit, just like the redeploy token, but now you get one where you get put in a Gulag, fine. I think that anything that keeps you in the game for longer, I think is a good thing. Then we've got the new DMZ experience, the Koshai complex. I don't know how you meant to say this. Koshai? Don't know. Anyway, new complex. This is kind of interesting. It says, somewhere in Al-Mazrah, an underground Koshai complex is brewing something that could shift the entire DMZ as we know it. Brewing something sounds interesting. Is it going to be Nova Gas? Is that it? I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the environment doesn't look very interesting. It looks like the raid. It's just a load of concrete tunnels. But this bit is interesting, where it says, operators must find a way to locate one of multiple entrances to this subterranean bunker complex, open it, and then do something. Be proactive in adding illumination to your hardware. Flashlights might be needed as you venture into it, and then secure night vision goggles once you've gone into it. Expecting some of the toughest something outside of Building 21. That almost looks like the prison in Rebirth, doesn't it, that room? But anyway, I kind of get the impression that this... I kind of get the impression it's not a separate map. I'm kind of with Westy on this, that I think it's probably just a part of Al-Mazrah. And it's just like, you know, we've already seen the bunker entrances. It was one of the missions for Redacted. So we know where the bunker entrances are. But the way they're talking, and because it says one of multiple entrances, that makes me think it. But they also said it's a new exclusion zone, which makes me think it is a new map like Building 21. So my prediction is that you're going to go to one of those bunker entrances in Al-Mazrah and then maybe like wait for a train or an elevator or something. Like maybe you'll go in and it'll be an elevator like in Building 21. You'll go in, wait for an elevator, and then when you go in that elevator, that will essentially exfil you from Al-Mazrah. But then next time you go in that with that character, you can only go to this map. That's what I think is going to happen. That's my prediction. So it is a separate map, but the only way to get into it is by going into Al-Mazrah and then going to one of the elevators. That's my prediction. But we'll see how it's going. If it is just in the map, if it is just in Al-Mazrah, A, it's a bit weird if they're adding a massive section to the map with all of the problems Al-Mazrah already has. And B, why aren't they not adding it to Battle Royale? Why is it just in DMZ? That seems weird if they start having like as far as I know, there isn't a separate version of the map for DMZ and Battle Royale. Like it's the same map, isn't it? Like whenever they update stuff in one of them, it updates it in both of them. Having two versions of the map, that sounds to me like it would be a massive headache, but that seems like it would cause more problems. But yeah, so I think you're going to at some point load into a new map when you go in here, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. They've also got Warzone ranked play. They're doing a big blog post about this today, so I'm not going to talk about it so much. But the important things, I think, everyone starts in bronze, so skill-based matchmaking is going to be a nightmare at first when you're in bronze against people who are like super hard. It's going to take a couple of weeks before bronze actually turns into bronze, I think. I think bronze will start off very difficult. You'll get all of the people who are trying super hard and are really good at the game doing it there. And it says you get points for assists, eliminations, and your placement. So that's good. Having all of the different sides of it. It'll be interesting to see what the weighting is. Like, is it more for kills? Is it more for placement? Because if it's more for placement, then people camp and play slowly, which some people don't like. If it's more for kills, then people just rush around. And I think that's probably more likely. And then but then winning doesn't feel like such a big deal. So we'll see. It's probably just like the way they do tournaments and stuff. But then, yeah, they said they're going to talk about that more today. So probably at 6 o'clock today. And then there's also a thing just about Plunder coming back. And then there's some, what else is there? There's some new camos, there's some new guns. This thing's like a pistol. It's a bit like an SMG. This is a powerful, like, pistol that is also fast, I think. They say, yeah, it's a It's an automatic, fully automatic, like Desert Eagle by the looks of it. It sounds crazy. Throwing stars. Don't know if that cares. This basketball player, Kevin Durant, is in the game. And I think that's about it. Oh, and then there's some new bundles. That's one of these bundles is the one that costs like 3,000 points or something. So that's basically it. This update's coming next Wednesday. I'll probably hop in and check out the DMZ stuff first, do the raid at some point. If I, like I said, if I can get Flynn and Scott about, we'll do the raid at some point and run through that and see what that's like. I'm like, it said, I think, that the new DMZ stuff might be coming in season, and I spoke to one of the Activision community managers and asked them about that, and they said it was like unsure at the moment as to whether it's coming next Wednesday or it's coming later. So it sounds like they don't really know. Maybe there's some bugs and stuff to sort out. But yeah, so maybe we'll be going into DMZ to do the new stuff. If it's not ready for next Wednesday, we'll just do the raid, and then we'll do that later. Anyway, I'm going to go off to Sweden now. So, well, we're going to the airport later, and then we'll go to Sweden tomorrow. But if you want to follow that, it's over on Instagram. If not, I'll see you ready for the podcast next week. On Monday, we'll be back with more podcast 9 a.m. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.